All right, today what I want to speak about is the previously held opening ceremony for the 50th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Caricom. And I just want to express my feelings about what I heard there. I'm going to highlight from three leaders from Wholeness, from Kamala in Trinidad, and from Prime Minister Drew. And so we're going to jump into that just now. And let me just say, yeah, disappointment is an understatement for how I feel about what I heard at this opening ceremony. But before we jump into it, like the video, subscribe to the channel so we can grow this community. All right, so let's just jump into it one time. Now, the overarching thing for me, what I got away from this here, is that Caricom is only together in name alone or on paper. It is really fractured. Caricom is fractured. And the lot of bobbing and weaving that went on at this opening ceremony, the lot of walking on eggshells because nobody wanted to call out the real issues. Nobody really wanted to deal with the elephant in the room. Majority of these speeches were hollow, empty, word salads, with no real teeth, nothing to really grab onto. I will say all of them except for Kamala, because Kamala said she piece, she said what she said. I don't agree with most of it, but she said what she said. And I'm pretty sure, coming out of this meeting, her speech will be remembered. For the rest of them, with their vanilla, almost like I wrote their speech, nobody can remember them things, including Drew. Drew had one of the most, it was just empty. It was just a word salad. It was just vanilla. There was nothing of substance. And of course, he brought our local politics to the regional scene. So let's just start here, because Wholeness was the one who kind of set the tone for what everybody else followed with. He was the one who put it out there that, yeah, this might be Caricom, but we do what we want still. We might say we want to be together, but the reality is, we're doing what we want still. So take the way, Wholeness.
For decades, an idealized narrative around Caribbean integration, while well-intentioned, has framed perhaps unrealistic expectations within our respective populations. It has also perhaps unintentionally diminished the genuine strengths of our existing arrangements.
So right there, you see what he's saying. He's saying what all of us think about Caricom is just not real. It's idealistic. We expecting too much from Caricom. For what we think Caricom is, it's a pipe dream. And so he can break down his reality as to what Caricom really is. So what are we supposed to believe? We normal folk, normal citizens, what are we really to believe? Are we ready to put our faith in Caricom if even the leaders don't feel as though Caricom is what it's supposed to be? Because ideally, on paper, the intention for Caricom is to be stronger than what they are saying it is. It's to have more cohesiveness, more teeth, more collaborative efforts on certain things. I mean, for crying out loud, it means Caribbean community, right? And so he's telling us right now, yeah, that's what I feel is supposed to be. But let me tell you what Caricom really is. It's not the idealistic thing that you all think this whole kumbaya together and this kind of thing. No, sir. Here we sit, Caricom is all really about.
An association of independent states bound not by uniformity, but by shared purpose, mutual regard, and a deep history of collaboration. Caricom is not, and has never claimed to be, a political union. Our treaty does not mandate a singular foreign policy or a supranational authority. And because we are sovereign states, each accountable to our own electorates, we will at times assess risks differently, sequence priorities differently, or interpret geopolitical opportunities differently. That is not evidence of the weakness of our association. This is the natural expression of sovereign democracies navigating an increasingly turbulent global environment.
So there you have it, folks. That is what Caricom is, according to Andrew Holness of Jamaica. And so the reality is setting in that, yeah, I see it as weakness though, so he could say what he wants. Because if you're comparing, let's look at the EU with and without the UK. The UK thought it best to exit the EU. And now they're catching licks for that. Economical, social, and all kind of level. They're catching licks for Brexit. Because most of them felt as though, oh, we don't want Brussels dictating certain things. We don't want EU dictating certain things. We are sovereign, whatever. Yes, we are all sovereign states. We are all independent states within Caricom. But this kind of mindset where, yeah, we might be together, but we are apart. That is the problem that Caricom is facing. Nobody standing together on certain issues. There are certain issues facing the Caribbean right now that, in my opinion, are black and white. Extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean from America. The treatment of Cuba from America. The whole idea of tariffs from America. The whole idea of the war on Venezuela from America. So you hear the recurring theme. America is a problem here. But you will be, if you want to listen to this thing, you're going to hear no mention from none of these leaders, except for Kamala. But she mentioned them in a different context. But for the rest of them, who playing like that okay, we're together, but we're not to mention the elephant in the room. And so let's set the tone for the entire thing, because a lot of them reference what he said. Drew referenced what he said, Kamala referenced what he said. That everybody got their own thing dealing with. And so therefore, as Caricom, yeah, you might want to think that we should be together, but no. Everybody got to look out for themselves still. Right? They got to look out for themselves still. And so that's the tone that was set by this leader, right? The outgoing chairman of Caricom. That, yeah, in an ideal world, we'll all move together as one. We'll all share the commonality. We'll all have similar ideals about foreign policy. That's in an ideal world. But the reality is, everybody doing what's best for themselves. I don't know how to take that, right? Because on some levels, you can see what they are talking about. But then this whole other pretense like Caricom is stuck together still, that is kind of annoying to me. Because the reality is, maybe we're not. But yet they want to sing like you're talking about, he gone from island to island to reinforce this and reinforce that. So all them tell you these things when they went over there, they told you that, look here, yeah, Caricom cute and all, but we doing our own thing. Was that what they told you? But anyway, that's Wholeness set the theme, the trend, the tone for the rest of the leaders.
Too often, differences in national perspectives are portrayed as fractures, threatening the regional project. I submit that they are nothing of the sort. While there are undoubtedly circumstances where one voice has and will work for us to great effect globally, variations in national perspectives is not a liability to be feared. It is a resource to be harnessed. The measure of our integration should therefore not be uniformity of position, but effectiveness of cooperation. Indeed, our diversity of economies, political traditions, development strategies, and governance approaches is one of CARICOM's most underappreciated strengths. Each member state functions as its own laboratory of democracy, able to test policy innovations that others can study, refine, and adapt. This is not divergence. It is distributed regional problem solving.
Well, to me, all that sounds a lot like gaslighting. They are trying to convince us that the current trajectory of CARICOM is a strength and not a weakness. All the inner fighting, the bickering, the difference of opinion, different stances, and different international issues, that's a strength. When clearly, from my humble opinion, that is not, there's no such thing. That is not a strength for me. I feel as though if we speak with one voice on certain issues, that shows more strength than being fractured and splintered on certain universal issues, like the issue with Cuba, America, Venezuela, tariffs, all those things. And so he's saying, yeah, you don't pick and choose when we're going to come together as one. But when you don't serve us as an island, as a nation, we put that aside and we think about ourselves. We look within ourselves. So all this song and dance about Caribbean unity, Caricom unity, is just that, song and dance. Because when the rubber hits the road, when push comes to shove, every man look for themselves. Every man see for themselves. And it's very funny that this kind of language is coming from the larger islands in Caricom. Well, English-speaking Caricom. The larger islands. Just like what happened in the years of Federation, West Indian Federation. Y'all remember? Right? 1 from 10 equals 0. So again, these bigger islands are controlling the narrative as it relates to Caricom and how it should be handled. So I mean, do I play gladdy, I run up and down when I'm playing, go visit all of them. But like I said in a previous video, how many Caribbean chairmen came to St. Kitts to visit just to dialogue, just a courtesy call? How many did? Holness was the last one. Was he in St. Kitts to just dialogue and talk and see what's going on? No, because they don't care. They have their own initiatives and they are pushing their own agendas. And so cannot be said any clearer. Caricom is fractured. Caricom is not together. Every man for themselves. It's only unified in name alone. Every man for themselves when it comes to certain things, especially foreign engagement. So that is, the rest of his speech was just the same normal buzzwords, climate change and AI and movement towards working together, same buzzwords. Nothing that you could latch onto and say, yeah, I see what stance they're coming with. The only thing that stood out in his speech is the fact that he's telling us clear as day that Caricom is not together. And he's trying to convince us that us being fractured, us being splintered is a strength and not a weakness. And I know the old adage say, divided we fall. Stand together, divided we fall. I know that's the old adage. And so, I don't know if this new interpretation of unity is something that people can grasp onto. So that's wholeness. Let's listen to the other key speeches from this opening. And I'm jumped to Kamala and her interesting speech. So let's jump into that. A lot of contradiction in her speech. A lot of things I don't believe in. Some things I understand, but I don't have to like them, but I understand. But let's see what she said.
It's not my first visit. I had the pleasure to work here with Mia. We were both young budding lawyers then. We are still budding lawyers, but we did work together here in St. Kitts.
Now it's very interesting that she mentioned Mia Motley, because later in her speech, she kind of threw shade at Mia Motley, talking about kidnapping of some individual from a next Caricom country, and talking about persons campaigning against her party in election. So let me just say from the onset that this speech was very divisive, and Kamala did not come here to speak to show unity in Caricom. For a larger part of this speech should mention Caricom and Trinidad, not as if Trinidad is a part of Caricom. When she's talking, she's saying Trinidad and Caricom, and so from that you could get she wanted to do with Caricom really and truly, you know. She don't really want to do with Caricom because she brought gripes, I tell you. She brought gripes to this ceremony. All kind of issues she brought. So let's see what else she has to say outside of what she said about Myanmar.
I have to say some things that may be good and kind, but I have to also face the reality of what is happening in my own country, in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I welcome the words of Prime Minister Holness when he spoke of the balanced way that he looked at the Caricom. We all have different pathways to walk, but our destination, our goal, our aim is the same. It's for a better quality of life for the people in our country and for the whole of the region. So, Prime Minister Holness, we thank you. We were very happy with your words, the balanced approach that you took. And of course, we really admired the resilience of the Jamaican people when you weathered that horrible, devastating storm in Jamaica. We all took note.
So when I told y'all Holness set the tone, that's what I'm talking about. Because you reference Holness talking about the balanced approach to Caricom. Meaning, we're going to do what we want. We ain't keep on unity really and truly. We're going to do what we want in the best interest of our countries. And that's it. Because at the end of the day, we stand alone. That's the mindset she brought to this whole thing. And so while I can agree that not all countries facing the same dilemmas, some things, in my view again, are universally wrong. No way, not care how you twist and turn it, some things are just wrong. And some things need to be spoken about. And we're going to dig into that later on.
And we're really admiring what you've transitioned then and what you're still doing now. So Trinidad and Tobago, today we reaffirm our commitment to remain a vested partner in the work of Caricom. But I also like to take an opportunity for a short time to speak openly and constructively for the benefit of all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. To date, it remains very unsettling to me that in October 2022, the then sitting TNT government coordinated the kidnapping of a Trinidad citizen from another Caricom state. He was visiting another Caricom state, and he was kidnapped. Our Supreme Court has ruled that he was kidnapped. He was placed in handcuffs, transported to the airport, and then back to Trinidad. I think.
You see now, this is 2026, and Kamala bring up things from 2022, and she's accusing another Caricom nation of engaging in or facilitating kidnapping of a Trinidadian citizen. Right. When I did some further reading, I found out it was Barbados. The person was in Barbados and they were kidnapped from Barbados. That's what I gathered. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but that's what I gathered from reading. And so I guess Kamala got on her chest from a long time. And so Kamala couldn't wait until Caricom meets to let it off her chest. Because we're talking 2022 and Kamala bring things 2026. Now tell me how that is going to unify Caricom. We're not sure them kind of wood. We're not sure shade. Tell me how that is supposed to unite Caricom. It's not going to. It's going to divide Caricom even further. So, yeah. I don't know if there was a place, time or place for that. So I don't know if Drew met with her, if they had the one-on-one meeting, and she didn't say that on a sideline, because I don't know whether there are any cars on the main stage. But Kamala feel it should be on the main stage, so, all right, Kamala.
An RSS plane was used to transport him. He was kidnapped. And then I was opposition leader. I wrote to the Caricom Secretariat, that's 2022. I wrote to the Secretariat of the Caricom asking, what happened? How could you have facilitated kidnapping of a TNT citizen? Please let us know what was happening and how it happened. To date, that was 2022, I have not had a response from the Secretariat. Caricom governments and their political parties who actively involve themselves in the domestic and political affairs of member states, their sister or brother parties, cannot then expect that when we come together, that we must hug up each other. When in the last election gone, you sent your missives, you sent your people from your party to openly campaign against another political party. I'm sorry I have to share this, but it hurt me a lot when I saw it transpire within the last set of elections in the Caricom. So Caricom governments.
No, I mean, again, Kamala is there to divide. Kamala is talking about the fact that, I mean, across the region, a lot of parties recognize each other as brother and sister parties. That's why you have a lot of Labour governments with red in the Caribbean, and then you have certain like Democratic or whatever, like PAM and those kind of parties with yellow. And so they see each other as brothers and sisters across the region. And so what's wrong if brothers and sisters campaign together? What is wrong with that? But she have an issue with it. I guess she don't like it if it ended up meaning that she would have lost. And so she brought that to Caricom to do what? If they see each other as brother and sister parties, you're going to stop them from supporting each other? Why can't I learn from my brother and sister party in the next island? How you did the campaign? Why you did this such and such? Come help me sort out this. Like, what is wrong with that? Isn't that the essence of unity? Isn't that the essence of coming together? Because it's not like it's one-sided. The reds and reds can link. The yellows and yellows can link. And whatever else. Whoever identify as brother and sister parties. So what is the gripe? What is the issue? Right? What is the issue with that? I'm pretty sure you might have been invited to other places to deal with certain cases. Like boundary cases and those kind of things. Because if I'm not mistaken, she was brought in to deal with certain cases, comes to boundary and those kind of stuff in certain countries. And so that's political still. So you're engaging in certain things, but you have a problem when it is done to you. And so I don't see why she want to bring this here and ruffle feathers just like that. What are you looking at enemies for? Right? What are you looking at enemies for? You're India. Right? So that part again rubbed me the wrong way when she was speaking about that.
If we had to hug up each other and cooperate, it cannot be that last week you sent your person down to St. Vincent or to Jamaica or to wherever, or to Guyana. You sent your political persons, not technocrats. You sent them down to campaign.
From where I'm standing, elections happen. When it finishes, you should be able to embrace your brother. You should be able to come and embrace, yeah, you ran a good campaign, you beat me, let's work with each other until next election cycle. So you're telling me you want them to be enemies. You want to make enemies until next election, Kamala? How that make sense? That don't make no sense. Why you want to look enemies? Like if we run a campaign, clean, whatever, I beat you, you can't say, okay, good job. Let's when I see you, we can daps up, hug up, that kind of thing. You want to take the political part and make it personal? Like, come on, better than that. That's unnecessary confusion, unnecessary seeds of discord that you're sowing as it relates to Caricom in this part of your speech. Straight up.
That has led to, what I say, unneeded factional divisions and private conflicts between regional leaders and political parties. And of course, it hinders the progress of the Caricom. As we move.
And in your infinite wisdom, do you think bringing this like that is going to help to mend those fractures? I'm just wondering. Do you think you're going to mend those fractures? I really think that. You're going to just deepen whatever wounds. I saw some social media posts talking about how she called out Mia and Mia didn't clap for her speech and whatnot. So you're already sowing seeds of division. And if that's true, why do you want to tangle with Mia Motley? Like why? You just said that y'all are, two are the only few women in leadership roles in the Caribbean. So where's the sisterhood in that? Right? Where's the sisterhood in all that? Where you want to go and, tangle with Mia Motley and that kind of, what I would consider petty kind of things. The campaign done, election done, two you win. Let's move on. Don't be looking at enemies still.
Very careful note of what happened in the Caricom in 2025 when my government chose to lend support then to the Nicolas Maduro regime. And despite repeated threats against two fellow Caricom members from Venezuela, most of the Caricom stood against the two. Only two were threatened. One was Guyana, still under threat. I openly said that if they touch Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago will be there with you and stand with you. And the other was Trinidad and Tobago. We are threatened, and we are still threatened by Venezuela. I'll say a little more about that in a moment. So how could the Caricom be a zone of peace when a narco dictator who imprisoned and killed thousands of civilians and opposition members, you will see recently over 300 persons from the opposition in Venezuela have been released. They were in prison because of politics. So how can it be?
Now right there, with that sentiment, I agree with her. Because Venezuela threatening these two sovereign nations. That should not be. Caricom should unite as a body and say, no, 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 no. That can't work. You can't come with that. But I think Drew mentioned that they were able to sit down and negotiate and try to get to some understanding with Maduro. But clearly, it wasn't enough because, as she's saying, Guyana was still being threatened. But here's the funny thing. America get rid of Maduro, but who's in charge still? Isn't part of his faction still in charge? So, I mean, you're buddying up to Trump. Did that really help a particular way? But I agree that if these two nations who are part of Caricom were threatened, the rest of the Caricom nations had the right to say, no man, that can't, no. We're going to stand in solidarity with Guyana and Trinidad, and we are against these things. Our region, as she said, should be a zone of peace. Peace for everybody from all threats, including Venezuela. So I agree with that part. So, let me hear what she's got to say.
When that regime was threatening violence to two CARICOM member states, there was no voice from the CARICOM. We were talking about a zone of peace. And in my respectful view, my country is not a zone of peace, and I'll tell you why. Because of the unreliability of the CARICOM in the above situation, TNT Guyana, we cannot bind ourselves to the same political ideologies, the same foreign issues, and the same security policies of the entire CARICOM. That's why I welcome Prime Minister all those words, that we have each our own pathway to walk, depending on what is happening in our country. And so, my friends, I say, going forward, we will work with the CARICOM. We were invested in the CARICOM. We've been there for...
Well, I wonder what her speech would have been had Holiness not mentioned that. Because like she come to those views. But she really appreciate what Holiness said. And so she tried to reiterate to say, yeah, you see, I got support right there. Holiness support me. So, yeah, so all of you, go where you going. Because Holiness support me, and I believe what he said. And so, that's why I do my own thing. I ain't standing alone here like no cheese. So, she must be glad that he mentioned that in his speech, eh?
From day one, and we want to be there. My son, this Belgian, recently was trying to apply to UE to get into law school. And when he took his Belgian passport, they said, no, no, no. You have to come and bring a TT ID card. Sounds like a joking matter, but a serious matter. May you know that. My son is born in Barbados, and of course Trinidad. So I've had that experience of living and working. Jamaica, Barbados, and of course my own country, Trinidad and Tobago. So we will want to have our own.
Well, come now, she got real issues with Barbados, boy. Because, yes, she might be joking, but she dead serious. Because as she child. And so they were not giving her child what she wanted, and she get vexed because she's saying, the man born in Barbados. And so why you giving me a hard time to get into the law school up in Barbados? So it come like a beef with Barbados. Because she had to shade one way, she shaded another way. I mean, women, work together, man. Don't pull on each other. Come on, ladies. Come on.
For issues, policies, defend our sovereignty as we see best. And so I come to the elephant that might be in the room. I come to the USA and the cooperation that we had with the USA.
All right, see? So I appreciate this here. Everybody else has skipped around the issue. Nobody want to talk about the USA. Nobody want to mention America. But Kamala said, look here, elephant in the room, let me talk about it now. Like I said, I don't like what she said, but at least she had the cojones, the balls to bring it out. Unlike a lot of these leaders who are so vanilla with their speeches, they don't want to say anything. We all know, we all citizens in the Caribbean, we know what's going on. We're not idiots, we know what's going on. Talk to us like we're adults. Talk to us like we actually know what's happening. Everybody had this washed thing version with Cuba. I'm gonna let you talk about Cuba because Holiness was very similar with Cuba, and Joe was very similar with the Cuban issue.
Thanks to President Trump, thanks to Secretary Rubio and the U.S. military, I say thank you today for standing firm against narco-trafficking, human and arms smuggling originated from Venezuela. That is what we were facing in Trinidad and Tobago. Maybe some of you other islands in the Caribbean, your nations do not have that level of illegal migration and, of course, the crime. So in 2024, crime was being treated as a public health gimmick of those murders, they were gang-related, driven by narcotics, by firearms from smuggling from Venezuela, and gangs coming out of Venezuela and mingling and mixing with gangs in Trinidad. In 2025, change of government, change of policy to treat with the drug cartels and the gangs as violent terrorist organizations. The military action by the American military in the Caribbean caused, you know what happened in our country? Caused our murder rate to decrease by 42%. You know what that meant? There were 257 less murders in TNT. I can say thanks.
Now, this is where I kind of separate myself from what she's saying. So I understand you have a different reality dealing with. But my thing is this. The penalty for drug smuggling in America, last I checked, it was not the death penalty. And so there's no way you should be supporting that kind of military action in the Caribbean region. The bombing of boats, etc., etc. There's no way extrajudicial killings should be supported in the Caribbean region from America. No way that should be supported. No way. That is wrong on every single level. Because you talk about gun and smuggling and gun. Well, last I checked, the Caribbean ain't got no gun factories. The Caribbean has no gun factories. So where do them guns coming from? Majority of those guns coming from America. Because they rampant use of guns and whatnot. And so should we not tell America, watch here, all the guns are coming down to the Caribbean, we have a problem. Should we go up and start bombing America because they bring people smuggling guns? Like, what are we saying here? You cannot be supporting extrajudicial killings in our Caribbean waters. You can't just bomb and people just and kill them. It is wrong. So I don't care how commentators phrase it and make it feel like, oh, whatever, we're with me. No, there are other ways to handle those things. And so even if the American military come into Trinidad and clean out the people, if they fight back, you shoot them, fine, they fought back. So you have every right to, if they're armed, drug people, they're fighting back, sure, take them out. But you military can't come in, round them up and, do something about that. So the killing of people, me can't support that there. As for her to try to sell it like, yeah, y'all didn't understand. I understand that killing people just so cannot be right in no way, shape, or form. That's where I diverge from what she's saying.
Again, to President Trump, and thanks again to Secretary Marco Rubio. I thank them and the U.S. military for the cooperation and what they shared with us for national security matters. Maybe in your islands you don't have the kind of crime we have. I know, Prime Minister Hudson, as we tried to pass the Oslo bill in Trinidad, we were not as fortunate as you in the Parliament, but I know you have done well with your murder rate. So some of us, the crime is so bad, I cannot depend on just my military, my protective services, and certainly from you in the Caricom, many of you do not have military or large police services to help us down there. So again, I repeat, in Trinidad, there's a saying, who vex lost? But we gained from the help, I'm saying, that military help, and I will welcome them again.
So at least I can appreciate that she unapologetic. She said what she said. And that's just it. Thanks to Trump, thanks to Rubio. USA and Caricom, y'all could talk all I want. We got our own issues. We're going to deal with it how best we can. But again, I say, you can't just be killing people just like that. And I can't support that at all. Right? And then, of course, she spoke about Cuba. And of course, because she wants to be in cahoots with America, she's going to say it in a mealy-mouthed kind of way, which makes no sense. The stance that these people have on Cuba makes no sense. Jamaica wants to say, oh, humanitarian crisis. They want to say, okay, we don't support the Communist Party. Everybody should have democratic rights. But anyway, let her finish and I'll continue talking about that because Drew also spoke similar on that.
So fair democratic election. Everyone in this room was elected by a free and fair democratic election. Everyone in our countries. And so I ask, why do some Caricom governments and political parties believe that they and their parties and their supporters should have the right to contest democratic elections to choose them as leaders, but the Cuban citizens have no right to free and fair election? And whilst I talk with you, Prime Minister Holness, I empathize with the people, the good people of Cuba, But there's a regime that's a dictatorial one, and none of us want that in our country, not one of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. We were all elected by free and fair elections. And so we cannot advocate for others to live under communism and dictatorship. But we want to live here in our Caricom region under democracy and capitalism. That's an oxymoron, it's a contradiction. For ourselves, we want free democracy. But tell the Cuban people, okay, we feel sorry for you. It can't work. And as you said, Prime Minister Holness, we have to find a mechanism for the humanitarian efforts of the people of Cuba. But at the same time, we cannot, and I will not, Trinidad and Tobago will not support a dictatorship in Cuba or anywhere else. We will not support it. What regular, free and fair democratic elections in a multi-party system? We are, all citizens must have equality before the law. There must be the rule of law. There must be majority rule and minority rights. We must have the separation of powers and the checks and balances. We must have accountability and transparency. We must have freedom of expression and association. And for us in Trinidad and Tobago, we must have capitalism. We will not support dictatorships. I turn to
Now you see, it's a kind of nonsense, me don't like about politicians, eh? The kind of nonsense. Here they're talking down to Cuba, talking about the communists, so we ain't want to support them, right? The people, okay, we're sorry for you, but we ain't supporting the communist government. That's why they're talking about Cuba, eh? Now, one of the largest communist countries in the world is China. China is one of the largest communist countries in the world. But nobody got a kind of smoke for China. America got to respect China because, yeah, they can't afford to get, they talk, but when China say, look here, rare earth metals, you want us to put back on them or what? They hush them out. Nobody else got that kind of smoke for China, one of the largest communist countries in the world. In fact, a lot of us work with China, work with Taiwan. But yet here they are talking about Cuba and the nature of the government. But I ask this question, yes, I believe that the political system is up to the people. If the people are happy with what they are dealing with, fine. Who are you to come and implement whatever you want to implement? Because a lot of Chinese are happy with what they have to work with right now. Majority are happy. You look at Burkina Faso. What's happening there? Vitore. Persons are complimenting him, bigging him up. But what my issue, is that what does this have to do with the embargo placed on Cuba by America? How are hungry people supposed to fight for their rights? If they're hungry, they're starving, they're downtrodden, they got access to nothing, how are they now supposed to rise up and fight for their rights? Two things can be true at the same time. You can be anti-communism, but pro-trade. You can be pro-trade. You can be pro, Cuba integrating with other countries, open free trade with them. The embargo has not been working. It's been crippling the people. And this false pretense that you're sorry for the people of Cuba, whatever. Because I don't understand the logic behind putting the embargo on the country. People are suffering. People are starving. We are living in poverty. So the people are suffering. And those in America like Marco Rubio enjoying that. Them are the ones who don't want to change it because Obama tried to change certain things. Then Trump reversed them. They want to say, okay, we're going to suppress the people them to a degree that they have to rise up on their own. But the people are already beaten and battered. So how are they going to get the strength to rise up now? How about this? Remove the embargo. Let the people see how good life can be. And if they choose to not want that government with all the cards on the table, free trade, everything, they realize, okay, wait, the government's still in giving us what we need, even though we open up our economy and stuff like that, then they might get the strength to rise up. But how are you going to suppress the people? Don't make them downtrodden, beat them down. They're going to see you as the enemy. They're going to see you as wanting to, they're not going to watch the revolutionary Castro as the biggest enemy. They love Castro in Cuba. They adore Castro. So now America keep this embargo for years. And now Kamala, Drew, all of Caricom, carrying America water when it comes to Cuba. Talking about, the communists and we ain't supporting the communism. Yet China right there. And they're supporting China. They're having deals with China. China in the work in the lands. Doing things with them. How does that equate? That is what happens when people are trying to be fake, when they're not real. If you are really recognize that America is the problem when it comes to Cuba, I need to call out America when it comes to Cuba. You can't be starving people to hopes that they rise up. That don't make no sense. At the end of the day, those in government have access to greater things than the common man on Cuban streets. The common man suffering, like real suffering, at the hands of America.
Quite briefly.
With the embargo and now the blockades. People trying to help them. Mexico want to help them. Russia want to help them. But they're blocking with the tankers and the whatnot. How that could be right? And Caribbean, who benefited so much from Cuba, chatting nonsense. Talking about, oh, we're going to get Drew with the nonsense. We're not going to involve politically, but the humanitarian aspect. But the humanitarian crisis is caused by a political policy. So they're intertwined. So call out the political policy, and that would help the humanitarian effort. You think the worst thing in Cuba is the government like that? Is what the embargo is doing to the people in the country. Because very well, they don't even know if the embargo was lifted. Maybe by now, they would have gone democratic. We don't know. So, Kamala rest of his speech, she spoke about Haiti and some other stuff. So, the main points I wanted from her, I got, which was Cuba. And she brings she gripes and she divisive nature. She thanking Trump and whatnot. So, let's go on to Mr. Drew and his shallow, I dare say empty, word salad. Not a calorie in the word salad. Not a calorie in there. Just this walking on eggshell nonsense. Bringing local politics into the regional scene. For what? I don't know. And then the boy the Congress now. Singing song on Trinidad. Like, why you want to further divide the Caricom? Go sing on Trump. Go sing on Rubio. How they doing Cuba. How they killing people. You talk about Kamala, nicing up with China. I understand the sentiment, because he's showing the hypocrisy of she talking about may want to be the communist, but yet chumming up to China. So I understand that. But time and place, Congress. Time and place. You don't know how volatile Caricom is. And it's not like Drew is out there standing firm for Cuba and against America. So let's see what Drew was talking about with all his emptiness.
Of ours is the most beautiful place on earth. And I know we have our international guests here, but I'm sure they would excuse me. But as I met each leader, it stirred something in me. It stirred a sense of pride, a sense of dignity, that though we varied sometimes in our own outlook, our politics, our geopolitical position, irrespective of all of that, there is indeed a fact that remains, that these leaders in the Caribbean, who are a reflection of our people, are surely people to be proud of. And so the Caribbean at this time and Caricom might be going through challenges and difficulties. But I want to say one thing before I get further into it. That at a time when it seems toughest, when the seas seem rough, when those who are the critics are doing their best at criticizing and suggesting that Caricom has lost its way, today, in St. Kitts and Nevis, in this great hall, in our presence, are all the leaders of the full members of Caricom. And almost all the leaders of the associated states. And the last time, when we had all the leaders in the same space for a meeting, was over 10 years ago. So in adversity, there's opportunity. Put your hands together for all our Caribbean leaders who are here with us this evening. Your Excellency, Dame Marcella Liebert, Governor General of these beautiful colleagues. Caricom stands at a decisive hour. The global order is shifting, and as was mentioned, it has probably already shifted. Supply chains remain uncertain, energy markets fluctuate, and climate shocks intensify.
These are all the same nonsense buzzwords they've been using all night. The same nonsense buzzwords. Global, geopolitical things are shifting. Say Donald Trump doing nonsense. Say America once allied is no longer such seeming to be allies. Say who once friends have now become enemies. Everybody with these glazing nonsense, it's just like don't make no sense. These talking points. Climate change, AI, global geopolitical climate. Like, man, like I read the same speech. Like all I get the same thing from AI. Everybody the same rhetoric. Not really saying much of anything. To be honest, Drew's speech had a lot of fluff, a lot of nothingness, to be honest. I'm not being biased. Go and listen to the speech yourself and tell me what was the key takeaway you got from that speech that you can hold onto and say, yeah, Drew, you put your stamp on this thing. You put your stamp on this meeting. Let me know. People may say I'm biased, but let me know what you think. If Drew's speech had any kind of substance to it, had anything that you can actually chew on, latch onto. He flattered Angie Holness. He mentioned St. Kitts. He talked about him being a doctor and got bad handwriting, and so he left notes for all the leaders. He talked about flying to meet all of them. So it was a lot of nothing to this point. And then the actual robotic speech started now, talking about geopolitical climate, global warming, supply chain issues, yada 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 yada. Same old. So again, this speech was just straight up disappointing. Nothing really to remember. It's not memorable. Kamala run is going to be memorable for the wrong reasons, but at least it's going to be remembered. People are going to be on social media posting about Kamala's speech. Drew's speech, one ear, next, forgotten. Let me hear him continue. Don't even want to continue with the speech, but anyway, let me hear some more he say.
In such a world, fragmentation breeds vulnerability. By contrast, my dear colleagues, togetherness generates resilience. Before examining the road ahead, it is important to reflect on who we are as a people. From the crucible of oppression and exploitation, we built free and democratic nations. From discarded oil drums in Trinidad, we fashioned the steel pan. From struggle emerged spiritual and the Rastafari movement throughout the region.
More fluff.
We gave the world soca and all of the genre. We gave
More fluff.
music that none other could have done. But we also produced Nobel laureates.
More fluff.
We also produced revolutionaries,
More
independence, and became the first country on earth where the slaves took their freedom. Revolutionaries who shaped labor rights and democratic governance. And I speak to the uprising of 1935 at Buckley's estate right here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
More fluff.
That our contribution has been significant to the point where even a founding father of the United States of America, His Excellency, Honorable, God bless his soul, Alexander Hamilton, Island of Nevis. That is our significant contribution to the world.
So Hamilton born in Nevis, that's our
Accordingly,
contribution.
A world without Caricom would be culturally poorer, intellectually diminished, and spiritually less vibrant. Just imagine a world without Caricom. It definitely would not be the same. Allies through the Treaty of Chaguaramas and the revised treaty. Confidence. It was grounded in cooperation functions. Those guiding principles are not simply historical markers. Rather, they are living instruments that must guide our conduct today. We must never, ever forget our foundational principles. Indeed, by ourselves, many of our states could not have achieved what togetherness has made possible.
Oh my God.
Through CARPA, we strengthened regional public health surveillance and coordinated response. Through RSS, Regional Security System, we enhanced collective expanded opportunity for all of our people, especially our young people.
No, listen.
Through the Caribbean Development Bank.
This part here, where he started listing all the different umbrellas that come under Caricom. And I'm like, Drew, know your audience, no? Know who you're talking to. Drew, anybody watching this thing here live, they already know what Caricom is about. All the leaders there already know what Caricom is about? Do you really need to dedicate part of your speech to rehashing what Caricom is about RSS? I swear that the only time you found this out is when he was going to become chairman. The way he doing it, let Donald Trump, they'll be like, hey, anybody know this thing? When you just discover something, he'll be like, I bet nobody heard this before. That's how you moving. We all know CX belong to Caricom, CARFA belong to Caricom, RSS belong to Caricom. We all know all of that. The audience knows that. Anybody watching this thing knows that. So, to rehash it made absolutely no sense and is actually fluff again. So let me just go on to what I deem might have been an opportunity to stand out. That's on the issues like Cuba. But, of course, he failed to do so. So let's just jump to that one time. Because the rest, all fluff, feel free to go and listen to the speech if you so desire. But let me just jump to that particular part.
Commence geothermal drilling this year.
So this is where Drew chose to, he decided to air out some of the local politicking and what going on in St. Kitts. Right? I don't know if he thought he was on a campaign stage. I don't know if he thought that he was talking to St. Kitts people only. But in my view, this had no business in this speech. What I think is that you could just mention it, but you don't have to go to the inner workings of it. So listen to hear what I'm talking about when it comes to geothermal and Nevis.
A goal that our fellow country of Dominica has achieved, and we have learned significantly from the experience. Significantly, this has been made possible through collaboration between the government and the opposition. When the national interest is clear, togetherness must prevail. When I initially take office and I met with the leader of the opposition, who is the premier of Nevis, I said to him, we have differing political views. As a matter of fact, I am on the government side and you're on the opposition side. But there's a resource in the federation that can liberate our federation and help us to become energy independent and transform us as a people. I think at the heart of everything, you want better for your people in Nevis, I want better for the people of the federation, and I'm willing to set all political differences aside so that we can treat the issue of geothermal and energy independence as a national aspect that we can forge together. And I want to...
Now tell me, if the whole ramble there had any cause in a Caricom speech, anybody care about the inner workings of St. Nevis politics? Anybody care about that? You couldn't just say we're working on geothermal and roll like that. Like, what is the point of all of that? You don't know time and place, right? You don't know time and place. You don't know how to rise to the occasion as a leader. Sadly, you do not know how to rise to the occasion. Talking about Mark and opposition and political... Yo, man.
Say that the leader of the opposition and premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Grantley, I have not seen him, but I trust that he's here with us this evening. Thank you for your collaboration and cooperation. And so I recognize, my dear sister from Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister, that you are here with the Chief Minister, I think you mentioned, from Tobago. Expressing that same solidarity when national interest is more important than our personal political ambitions. Thank you, Premier. And as a consequence of this coordinated approach, where we brought all together, including the opposition, for once again, I stepped out and said that the issue of national security and crime and violence cannot be a political football or just a political matter. It is a national matter. And if it is a national matter, then it takes a national approach. And so our position was to bring all together, government, opposition, and the community. And as a result of that coordinated approach, with, of course, national security being fundamental as well, over the past year.
And so in this part of his speech, right, he's trying to justify his statements about not wanting Haitians here in St. Kitts. So you're going back to that again. And so he's trying his best to try to put a positive spin on it. Unfortunately, Drew, you will never beat the allegations of you trying to be a little bit more divisive, of you trying to leave out a member of Caricom who needs help in the most dire way, to show that you are prejudiced towards a particular people. You will never beat those allegations, because right now most of the Haitian community done speaking out against you, besides on social media. So you can't come back from that one day. But yet he's trying his best to sell what he did. Hear him talk about Haiti and what.
We welcome members of the Haitian community and extended all of our social services and support, and settled a community of Haitians here in our small state. And so even as a small state, we have done such. However, our resources, we must admit, are finite.
Yep, so you hear that, right? You hear we're trying to sell, like, you make it sound so like we do so much, whatever. No, you're not going to beat those allegations, Joe. Your initial statement, the agreement with America, it was wrong. You cannot escape it. You should have never, ever point out or separate any Caribbean countries or Caricom countries. You should have never done it. You should have never no hint of favoritism, no hint of discord towards anybody, no kind of prejudice or anything towards a particular people. You should have never done that. You should have never displayed that kind of behavior towards our brethren in Haiti. And so we can't walk it back. You cannot walk it back. So yeah, you're on the big stage trying to sell it, you're trying to walk it back. It's not gonna happen. I mean, you don't hurt the people them. Right? You don't do your damage. And so, try as you might, you already branded things in a particular way. And it's not gonna change, unfortunately.
Spoken to the matter of Haiti. But the humanitarian situation in Cuba, our community must address. For a destabilized Cuba will definitely affect the whole region.
So at this point, you would think, okay, my boy gonna talk about Cuba. The man gonna let them have it about Cuba, stand up for Cuba, say the real things about Cuba. After all, he's studying Cuba. And so you understand the benefit that Cuba has brought to St. Kitts, to himself. And so therefore, he's not going to give you a mealy-mouthed answer when it comes to Cuba. He's going to say straight, look here, America, stop messing with Cuba. You would think so. You would think so. But of course, Drew, the forever disappointment. On the Caricom stage, on the local stage, forever disappointment. Here's what Drew said about Cuba.
A destabilized Cuba will destabilize all of us. Cuba's population is anywhere from 9 to 12 million people. Excluding Haiti, the rest of Caricom does not amount to 10 million people. Therefore, if a state within our community is so destabilized, it will affect all of us in the region. And as
Now I wonder, why is Cuba destabilized? Are they destabilized just out of the blue? Did the instability come from themselves? I wonder why Cuba might become or is destabilized. Could it possibly be because of the actions of one of the world's superpowers? Could it be? Would you dare say that that's the case? Would you dare say that these superpowers need to ease up off of Cuba? You think you would say it? Nope. Not this one yet. Not this one yet. Tall. Hear what the man gonna say.
matter, of course, it is important that the community looks at the humanitarian issue in Cuba, treats it extremely seriously, and the community must serve as a conduit to ensure that there is communication and dialogue between the forces that be, so that the best opportunity can be had. And so I ask the community that even though the situation might be daunting, we have a collective effort to make to stabilize our region.
So who are they supposed to communicate with? You afraid to say America? Are you afraid to say Trump? Are you afraid to say America? You need to sit down and have a discussion between Cuba and America. Are you afraid to pinpoint that America is the cause of Cuba's destabilizing? Are you afraid to just say simple as that? That we need to have dialogue between the United States and Cuba to try to, and along with the Caricom members, to try to reach to a reasonable solution to this humanitarian crisis. Are you afraid to say something as simple as that, Joe? Are you afraid?
I must give full disclosure. I studied in Cuba. I lived in Cuba for 7 years. I have friends there. I have people who are like family to me. They reach out to me and tell me of their difficulties. Food has become terribly scarce for some. Access to water has been challenging. Garbage fill the streets. Houses without electricity. I can only feel the pain of those who treated me so well when I was a student. I can feel their challenges and their difficulties. I do not get involved in their politics, but as a matter of humanity.
And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the reality of the situation. That we do not get involved in their politics. That is the crux of the problem right there. They are afraid to address the issue head on. They want to say it's a humanitarian issue. But why is it a humanitarian issue? It's a humanitarian issue because of a political decision made by the United States of America. That is why it has become a humanitarian issue. And so you spoke about how you actually studied there. You have friends there because, friends with friends like you who have a platform to speak up against the atrocities being levied against the Cuban people by America. You're talking about food, water, those things. Whose fault is that? The embargo on America is the one with the extra pressure on Cuba. And you call yourself a friend. And now you are the head of Caricom, the chair of Caricom. You are prime minister with a voice. And you cannot stand up and say that the United States, what you're doing to Cuba is wrong. Regardless of their politics, that's not the way to go about it. You're talking about how bad things are, but skirting the whole thing, I'm not getting involved in their politics. Cop out. Coward. Weak. So you feel as though you're eating with this speech, that you're being impassioned with this speech, when you're really showing the shallow nature of your thinking. When you really show you don't really care about what's going on. We're talking about friends and whatnot. You already said that you are going to hedge your bets by bringing in Ghanaian and Nigerian nurses and doctors and whatnot, because just in case America pressures for Cuba, we got, cut ties with Cuba. So you're already willing to take a blind eye to Cuba, because you have multiple platforms. Prime Minister of St. Kitts, Chairman of Caricom, and you're not willing to use any of those platforms to speak up for Cuba as it relates to who is actually perpetrating the ills and causing the humanitarian crisis on Cuba. We know who it is. So he who should not be named? Is this Harry Potter and Voldemort now? You can't call the name? This is where I lose respect for these CARICOM leaders. Not one of them dare mention anything about America's treatment of Cuba. They want to talk about Cuba in a vacuum. Like these things happening in a vacuum. Like these things only happening because of the political system. But what if the embargo was lifted? What if there was free trade? Couldn't Cuba strive like China under the communist system? Could you imagine how powerful a CARICOM Caribbean would be if Cuba was able to access more modern medicine? Could you imagine about the medical apparatus they have around, the training of doctors? Could you imagine the resource being just put to task in the Caribbean? America is so embarrassing with the health system. Could you imagine if all the Caribbean countries put America to shame with cheap, affordable healthcare systems thanks to Cuba if the embargo was lifted? That's why they don't want that. America don't want the strength of Cuba being showing. But these ones tap dancing. All these CARICOM companies tap dancing for the white man. Tap dancing for America against one of their own Caribbean. And they know the history of Cuba. They know the history. They know about America installing puppet leaders. They know about how great Cuba can be. But here they are tap dancing. Drew. We ain't going to have any political part of it. But the humanitarian part of it. Like, who is causing a humanitarian crisis? Who? According to Samuel, who is causing a humanitarian crisis? This is embarrassing for leaders in Caricom. Embarrassing, I tell you.
It is challenging. I would say it is almost impossible not to feel the pain that the pain that is conveyed to me in messages and calls from those who I lived among. And therefore, I want to bring that to Caricom so that we can look at the humanitarian situation. And like the others would have said before me, let us devise the mechanisms, the channels, so that we can help the people of Cuba.
So, I mean, y'all are not doing anything. You're not going to do anything. You talking as if you're supposed to feel somewhere. You have the platforms, multiple platforms now to speak up to help Cuba. So all the people who are your friends, who are crying out to you, you want to tell me you ain't feel nothing? You ain't feel nothing that you can actually go and say, yeah, America, you can't be doing this to the man them. The same Marco Rubio that y'all have at the Caricom, the same Marco Rubio is the architect of this current crop of hardship that Cuba is facing. And y'all welcome him with open arms. Welcome him with open arms. That'll be it for this video by Caricom. Caricom cooked, no? Caricom cooked. Caricom cooked.